when I'm through. Be better to make it sound controversial or something. I don't think there's anybody who's has a controversy about whether we have some global challenges. That is make it sound pretty clear. Controversial or something. I don't think there's anybody. All right. Okay. So we're in business now. Okay, let's get going. Hi, I'm Metta Spencer, and today let's go to Stockholm. There's somebody there I have been so eager to meet. His name is Jens Orbach, and he is in charge of a marvelous organization that I want to explore with you today called the Global Challenges Foundation. And the thing that I came across it by accident and was regretting that I hadn't known about it a long time, because what we are doing, his organization and mine, are so similar that we really ought to be in touch with each other. And so I want to talk to him, get acquainted. And this is literally our first meeting. We've been talking now for about 2 minutes. And so you get to be in on the getting acquainted session as we explore the similarities and differences between our organizations and what we're trying to achieve. I must say that I spent a good part of the middle of the night when I had insomnia for some reason, Jens. I was reading the document that you sent out recently, summarizing the state of affairs in the world today as we begin 2024. So it's a brilliant document, a very astute one, in which you look at the risks that are confronting the world, and give us a summary of where we stand and what we should be doing and what the options and possibilities are. So I think let's start by just asking you, if you will, to share with us the history of your organization and your purposes and what you actually do on a day-to-day basis. And I have some questions that I'll no doubt ask. So give us the lowdown on the Global Challenges Foundation, please.
Right, and thank you very much for inviting me. My name is Jens Orbach. I have a background as an economist and also a journalist, and for a time also in the Swedish government as a cabinet minister. And the last 5 years I spent with this research foundation called Global Challenges Foundation. And it's founded by a man called Laszlo Szombatfalvi. He was a refugee from Hungary and came to Sweden and was very successful at the finance market. But he also had a moral compass, saying that, well, we could look at risk at the finance market, but the major risk confronting humanity is that the planet might not serve humankind if we don't deal with the global challenges that we are facing.
Mm-hmm.
And we define the global challenges, the great ones, as they can actually affect human beings and kill 10% of humanity if they are not dealt with. And today we reckon climate changes, biodiversity, weapons of mass destructions, maybe AI will be there. There are pandemics sometimes. But these climate issues, weapons of mass destruction, and also biological collapse, they have in common that they are also created by men. They are not only threatening us, but we have made it happen, and it's in our hands to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
And when looking at the possibilities to do something about it, it's of course to see what kind of governance do we have here. And our great institutions, the Bretton Woods one with the UN and the World Bank and IMF, and they were all built a couple of years ago, and they were not really built for these challenges. So our foundation is very much concentrating on a better global governance for them, some sort of rule of law, some sort of place or room or legitimacy where we also can take decisions, sometimes binding, sometimes voluntarily, but the architecture for decision making is not really in line with the needs. That is our analysis, and therefore we spend our knowledge, but we are also an interesting part because we have some financial resources. So we try to stimulate the reform process. We are giving aid directly to the UN, to 30, 40 different organizations that we think are much better than we are, but are involved in the reform process, and sometimes also involved in good research on these matters, so that we also can see what is actually at stake. As you said, we work with a network of scientists in something called I don't know the name now, but they are looking into what is at stake and also formulating Earth system boundaries. Where are these boundaries that could be safe and maybe also just? And we can see that we are now out of 9 tipping points. Six of them are actually in danger. So that is a little bit on what we are doing.
Well, that's an excellent introduction to the whole issue. And the thing I most liked in reading all the documents that you sent me, there's one report, I don't remember the title, but it was a recent production with a number of chapters, each written by specialists. And it makes it very clear that you do think systemically, that you look at the connections between and among all of these catastrophes, these impending dangers, and see how much they're interdependent and how it's really smart to attack the whole problem as an interdependent whole comprehensive issue rather than just separately. That I find the most difficult thing to try to work with, because I do a lot of conversations with people, as I'm doing now, experts that we talk to for an hour at a time about different things, and they're all experts on something. They're not, there's hardly anybody who's an expert on the whole schmear, you know. So we do need to try to find ways, I think, of looking at our problems as interdependent and as a comprehensive package of issues that need to be addressed systemically. So I find that very refreshing when somebody at least acknowledges that and points out the difficulty of doing it, because people are specialists and they know anything. They know something about a very limited range of things.
As a matter of fact, we work a little bit with this complexity. We think that the IPCC, for instance, have worked very well. It's giving a ground for engagement and for activism and for more research, and it's based on research. But actually what we need is some sort of IPCC for the planet. It's not only climate, it's the other issues. And there are thoughts, and I can provide other people that you could speak with that are engaged in this. There is an idea of a global resilience council, for instance, because the Security Council have not been very positive in dealing with climate issues. So I think we need some sort of global resilience council within the multilateral system that could be knowledge-based and that could be connected to different UN bodies, and tomorrow or the next day maybe also can take decisions or ask for decisions. So this science policy interface really needs to develop a lot, I think.
Well, I'm a little hesitant to reply to what you just said because I don't want to start off a disagreement. But I'm not.
I'm a politician. I'm not one day without that. I live from that. Dragons
Yes,
lift
but
when the wind is blowing against, then we can lift. So
and you were a Scandinavian politician, which means you're much nicer than the ones I'm used to.
we are
I'm
getting
an
closer.
American transplanted to Canada, so I
Right.
see a variety of politicians, and I must say the Scandinavian ones are ones I prefer. But let's pass on to my caveat or my qualification on what you're saying, because your enthusiasm for the IPCC is certainly warranted, but I think has to be qualified a little bit because the IPCC is really controlled by countries, nations,
Right.
and nations are controlled by people who don't necessarily have the world's interests at stake. So that I find excuse me, hello. Yes, well, I'll let you in and please walk right in. I'm very, very busy. So come right in and walk to the back of the apartment.
I
Believe it or
agree
not,
with the
there's a man coming up to fix, hello? Uh, he's coming to repair the tiles in my bathroom. And I
Yes.
don't know why he's coming now, but
Yeah.
I'll have to edit this out.
Maybe I can just agree with you that that is a weakness of the IPCC.
Yeah.
And there are thoughts that having some sort of IPCC for the planet outside the UN and
I
Earth
was
Commission is
just going to say that
right.
I've heard of sort of rumblings that people are proposing it a voluntary organization. Countries join if they feel committed enough, and that would give a lot more energy to the whole effort, I think.
But
Because
I think as a politician, we shouldn't have the best challenging the good. I think the IPCC also has a good side, but it has a weakness in the political decision making because it should be scientifically based. But we shouldn't take it away. We can have something else that also have give some other competencies too. But you know, in politics, we are not striving for the best. We are striving for the least worst.
yes, okay. Well, that's a fair enough goal for any of us, isn't it? It
Right,
should
in
be.
life.
So I hope this man will. I have to interrupt us, but I will not. It won't take long because I will not allow it. Sir, come back this way, please. Uh-huh. Hello. Now I'm broadcasting now, so I really can't talk very long. Please help yourself go into the front bathroom there, right? You're in the hall, and have a look at what needs to be done, and we'll talk as little as possible because I'm doing something very important. Okay? Not that door, just one more door down. Yes. All right. Good. You'll see what needs to be done. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Fortunately, I can
No
edit all
problem.
this out. The only people who care are the stray people who happen to be watching at the moment, which is probably not many. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So where were we?
We were at the IPCC, but I
Yeah.
think we sorted that out.
Yeah. Okay. In fact, if I was looking for points of convergence and points of differences between our emphases, and when I was reading that document last night, and I probably have missed some things. The things that we have at the get-go, we announced the 6 global threats that we wanted to focus on, which were mostly war and weapons. My whole background has been concerned with nuclear weapons for most of my life. And then also now, the last 10 years, 15 years, global warming. But then we have famine, pandemics, radiation exposure, and cyber risks, which now has to include AI
and geoengineering.
Yeah. And then we also attempt to look at the various sectors like the economy, civil society, and global and governance, which includes, I think, human rights issues.
Mhm.
So that's kind of our our focus. In reality, the everything that you said that I read in that document, which I would like to share it with other people, because I think it's an excellent statement of the issues and some of the possibilities that exist now. So I'd like to forward that to some of my friends and organizations that we're connected to. But I noticed a couple of things where I don't know whether we agree or not. So let's explore that. With the climate change issue, I have been very involved lately with, I guess let's use the forbidden word and talk about well, I won't, the technology for restoring the climate to pre-industrial levels by technological means. And there's a word that I try to avoid using because it's so inflammatory. And but I think we've passed any hope of staying within 1.5 degrees. I think I'm very aware of the fact that James Hansen has recently taken the same position, or maybe he has all along, but he now talks about global warming and geoengineering as required. And so I've been exploring in a number of forums the various methods that are being proposed for. We're particularly interested in the problems of the Arctic, refreezing the Arctic Ocean, or at least keeping it as cold as possible. Certainly refreezing is by all means the most important thing that we could be doing. And so whether you agree with that, I don't know. The other thing that I noticed that I'm enthusiastic about, and I'd like to test your feeling, is I think for not only the reform of the United Nations to make it more accountable to human beings instead of states, I'm enthusiastic about developing greater use of citizens' assemblies. So I expect we'll be doing several new forums about citizens' assemblies in the next few months. So
Yes.
tell me,
Yeah.
do we agree on either of those?
Yes, let me first say that the things that have been written in our report are the sayings from the scientists. But in more or less, I agree with them. But starting off with the solar geoengineering, I think there are three aspects of that. I think one aspect is that it might take away some of all the efforts that we have to put in. So we cannot use solar engineering to say, okay, it's so troublesome with energy when it comes to transport or heating. So we can't do much there. We have to rely on geoengineering. So there's a big warning flag that geoengineering should not take away all the efforts that we have to do in order to go down and leave fossil fuel as our energy sources, number one.
Mhm.
Number two, I would say, is that the geoengineering in itself has a lot of threats if it doesn't come under some sort of regulation, convention. If you put out balloons and are putting out things you don't really know what the effect will be, because this system that we are now have been developed and in a balance for a long, long time. And to have experiments with that has to be under some sort of scientific regulation. That's point 2. And point 3 is that, of course, I think we are in a shoot over 2 degrees now that we will see. And it's going to be very difficult. It could also go through 3, and then we have tipping points into 4. So there cannot be a ban on scientific research, but it has to be governed. And we have to explore and see what we can do there, but it's really a dangerous area, I would say. So that is 3 aspects of that.
Okay. I'm familiar with both of the points that you make, and of course I agree, but maybe not as enthusiastically as you would like. The moral hazard argument is the one I think you mentioned first, that this is I think the chief argument against considering geoengineering. Geoengineering is just treated as a forbidden topic, really. You get laughed at or scorned if you promote that too easily. And I find, oh, here, excuse me, I've got to stop and talk to this gentleman. Yes, sir. I'm sorry to hold you. Come on in.
Yeah, oh, in the afternoon. That good?
If you want to come this afternoon, sure.
No, I'll call you. I'll call
Okay, sure. That'll be
you.
fine.
Okay.
If you need anything, just help yourself while you're around there.
Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Thank
Have a
you.
nice day.
Bye-bye. Okay, I'll have to take that out too. Anyway, yeah, I think that probably the real reason people are hesitant, the main reason has to do with the argument that if you relent at all on the demands for a cessation of use of fossil fuels, that will give people an excuse to, especially oil companies and so on, to continue. And Lord knows they're continuing anyway. I mean, if you look at the very limited progress that was made in Dubai in the language that they used, it was, they only stepped up they even used the word fossil fuels for the first time in any of their official documents. So clearly the fossil fuel companies are having a big influence on the statements and decisions that IPCC comes up with. And the argument is that if we talk about something else, it'll give them a chance to keep changing the subject and evading any duty to reduce it. So that could be. I personally think that we need that we're in an emergency, and there is absolutely no other alternative except to do some things that actually help reduce the climate threats by I've been exploring about 4 different modes of doing that.
Then you had another question on the citizen assembly, and we are not only in favor, but we are supporting citizen assemblies, and the one that are now coming up might be a citizen assembly that is connected to the Summit of the Future in September at the the Secretary General's common agenda that has gone through a high-level advisory board and now is on its way to the Summit of the Future.
I want to talk at length about that, but go on, because I think
so we are there are these people that are working with the Citizen Assembly and have done it before, and they have asked for resources at our foundation, and we will go into some sort of cooperation with them on that.
I noticed that civil society organizations are allowed to submit proposals or suggestions. The deadline has passed, so there's no chance for us to do it. I didn't even know about that option, but I imagine you have proposed something, and that you'll be engaged with advancing certain ideas. Is that the case?
Yes, we propose our different ideas in different forum. We are also supporting. There is now a what would I say? There is also Germany together with Namibia are facilitating the process up to Summit of the Future, where they will then come up with an idea for 192 other countries to, and I think they will work with that with their own decisions, but we have financed a little bit of their secretariat in order to have it possible. And I mean, we don't own these decisions, but we can also hand in different suggestions for improved and better global governance. And we also supported the Secretariat for the High-Level Advisory Board that was led by Shirley Johnson from Liberia and our former Prime Minister Stefan Löfven, which I work rather close with. And so they have come up with a series of suggestions that I can send you. And they have done that in collaboration with the UN ambassadors and many countries and a lot of knowledge, looking also into not always what would be the best solution, but what is a possible solution.
Good. Why don't you give me a preview?
Yes, I'll do that.
Okay, right now. Tell me what some of these suggestions are that your Prime Minister.
Oh, yes. The suggestions here are within different fields. One field is the financial architecture. And there is a great need to have financial flows from north to south for investments on sustainable development, solar energy, whatever. And the ambition here actually is to go from billions to trillions. And two bodies that could be very important here is the World Bank and the IMF. I myself worked with the IMF when I was I was at the Minister of Finance. It's a very conservative organization, but also it's working good in many ways. And I think now there is different ideas. One is called the Bridgetown Agenda, carried out by Mia Mottley, former president of a low island state, it's Barbados. And the thinking is that these special drawing rights that countries have at the IMF could be borrowed to low-income countries to secure investments. So what we need here is investment from pension funds, for private investments, not only official investments, but these private investments have to be secured in one way or another. It doesn't need to give a high revenue back, but has to be secured, and that has to be scaled up. And that is an area that is so fundamentally important, because the South is not agreeing to anything unless we show that we also can support them in their legitimate effort. So that is one area where there are different suggestions. Then they also have suggestions on the Security Council that is not mirroring the power or the people in the world. That has been up to discussion for many, many times. There was once a Swedish former prime minister who have many suggestions on that, very humble one that you should motivate your veto. But I myself, Macron has an idea that we should have a stronger global governance and we should have a Europe that could work with global matters. So a simple way would be for France to give its position at the Security Council to the European Union instead. But there are different.
Has Macron talked about doing
his ambassador answered me that can never happen, because the EU is so splitted, and this is something that France will keep. Yeah. So much for that.
I mean, I haven't heard anybody with any hope whatever of getting rid of the veto. I
No.
mean, it's just like everybody knows that's the worst problem or one of the worst problems, but I haven't heard anybody with the slightest aspiration to achieve any real change
No,
there.
no, but it's still a very big issue, not the least for all these people living in India, South Africa, Brazil, and that are not represented there, although so many people live there. So I think it's a legitimate effort, and they at least open up for discussion. Then one area that goes all over is there are many that goes over. One on strengthening gender equality. I have a background as Minister of Gender Equality. That is a mainstream in many of decisions. There is also an idea of possibility to take more of majority decision in some of the UN bodies, because if it should have unanimously agreement, it's very hard to get to come forward.
How
There
about
are,
a parliamentary assembly?
yes, I am in favor of a second chamber.
Mhm.
And that is a long shot, but if the UNs who have some strength in legality, it also have to have much more of legitimacy, and that could come from a second chamber. So we support that idea. We also support this organization, Democracy Without Borders. Mr. Bummel, who is one of the initiative taker there. Then there are suggestions around some sort of, I don't know, institution or envoy looking into the rights of future generations. And that I think could be of a norm, an idea that when we take decisions, we really need to look in how will that affect future generations. Just like that we have maybe learned how to see how does it reflect or affect gender equality, how does it affect the environment. Now also future generations must be taken into account. I'm just looking now in there are so many different fields that they are going into, and
You know, one thing that is much on my mind, and I guess everybody's lately, is enforcement of international law. You know, I mean, when the ICJ tells either Putin to stop what he's doing in Ukraine, or Israel to stop what they're doing in Gaza, they might as well have stayed in bed. It's not going to have any effect whatever. There is no way to make a country do anything except what it intends to do, or the guys in charge of the country. And I think that the highest priority has to be given to finding ways of actually creating and enforcing international law.
yeah, I
And
agree. I fully agree. That is something that can make us a little bit more civilized, because we will always have disputes and conflict of interests. Something can be carried out in politics, but we also need courts when we fundamentally don't agree. So I'm instead of solving that on the battlefield, it would be so fantastic if we can strengthen the legitimacy of the ICC and the ICJ. And we work a little bit with that as well. And now we might also support a group in Ukraine that are documenting war crimes, and I think they have an important opinion building role to play when trying to strengthen the ICC.
Okay, well, in the case of Ukraine, I think unfortunately a lot of the world's countries are more on the side of Russia than we would like, than I would like for sure. But so in a way, it is a matter of changing public opinion, so that if you get more legitimacy attached to the edicts of the ICJ, it'd be more likely to be followed. But I think that unfortunately we need something stronger because, for example, I think right now the Russian population is about 80% really supporting Putin's war. And unless there's some mechanism for enforcement against the public opinion in any country, I don't see how we'll really have law enforcement. I mean, if somebody's trying to break into my apartment, I call the police and they're here probably before he gets even through the door, and I have real doubts about wanting a world police force for all kinds of obvious reasons. But there must be some alternative. And I would like to see some system be created by which it would be possible to, if the ICJ rules against a country and says stop doing what you're doing, and they continue that that the recognition of the government should be withdrawn, that no other country will ever treat the leader of that country as a legitimate leader. They have to replace him with somebody who follows the law. Something of that kind, a stronger measure for real enforcement as opposed to trying to sway public opinion. Tell me how crazy I am.
No, you're not crazy, but it's difficult. And for instance, when this veto came up, was a decision in your country, no, in the US, that nothing should be higher than the Congress and the Senate. So they have to have the veto, and it was the same talk in the Duma in Moscow at that time. But I am in favor of having some sort of police, and it should defend values, and maybe. But this is when I give up, because I think UN is the best we have so far, is to have some sort of alliance of the willing, to say that we that would like to protect democracy, rule of law, maybe at least we should have some sort of force. And that could be, I think, a strong soft power, because we should then also say that in order for you to trade with us, to have exchange of technology and science, you have to live up to some standards. And I think that has been a successful path for the European Union, to say, if you should be in this club, it's voluntarily, but then you have to live up to these criteria. And I think maybe that could also go for, there are some discussions on that. Maybe as NATO as a start point, but NATO also have a history that is not only shining.
No, certainly not. Tell me, you may be in on some conversations that I don't know anything about. Tell me more about, you say there is already some discussion about a coalition of the willing or something of that kind.
Right.
I don't know anything about that. Can you?
Yes, we worked a little bit, and I can send you that, with an Australian organization, and their idea. Well, there are also from former Senator McCain, who has. I think there is an organization called Alliance of Democracies, for instance. That is one thing, but this Australian initiative is more of also concentrated on security, and that is having NATO as a starting point, but also allowing other countries, if they live up to the democratic requirements. If India would do that, then it doesn't need to be Europe and the US and Canada.
Hold on now, you mean you'd start, your organization would really be NATO expanding?
Yeah, it's not
Globally?
my idea. It's not my idea. So because it has a lot of difficult within it, but that is one idea. Another from Mr. McCain is to have an alliance of democracy, and that is having an idea of a new UN that could also entice countries on democratic grounds. And that could maybe be a soft power, and also people that would be like to be seen as democracies and also can gain from that exchange. That is at least alternative discussions if the UN is sort of blocked or having a heart attack. But nothing can happen there.
Yeah. Okay, well, my heart says, oh, good. But I've been going through a crisis. It's sort of like, I don't know, if I were a Catholic and I've just become an agnostic or an atheist or something, which is not the case. I'm not anything like that. But I am finding it very difficult to be as passionate about promoting democracy as I have been all my life, which is, it's been a bedrock of everything I've believed in. And I look around the world and I see real democracies making absolutely abysmal decisions, reaching very bad policies. And yet you can't say that it's because they're not democratic. It's very good democracy, or at least as good as we've got. And they're doing dumb things, and not only just dumb things, but fatally dumb things. Some of the policies are just, I mean, if you look at the two, Putin and the Trump possibility of getting Trump back again, that would be a real blow. But you have people that I could also name in a whole bunch of other countries that aren't much better. I am, I'm really thinking, what's gone wrong with democracy? It's just not working. And what do we do about it? And the only thing I can think of is citizens' assemblies. Something like democratizing things so that we don't spend all our energy and resources on running elections that are questionable.
I think I have two thoughts on that. I think citizen assembly is one method, but it really has to develop a lot because we have to vote for people. I think what is missing in our democratic system today is that we have taken it for granted. We have a system over there, but in order for a democratic system to work, you have to be engaged in it. And I would say that the infrastructure of democracy is civil society that is engaged. Otherwise, even democracies could be hijacked. So when looking in, for instance, I think it was a bad decision in Britain that they should leave the European Union in Brexit. But there was a poll at the voting station where they asked people what they have voted for and if they were interested in engaging in what they voted for. And to my surprise, there was a much more of engagement in Brexit, in leaving the European Union, because those who voted for Britain to stay thought that it was obvious and we are in already, so why should we even care and bother and engage? So I think just as you have to persuade every new generation not to smoke because it doesn't come by itself, I think the engagement in what we have thought was self-evident, we have lost a little bit of that, I think.
Okay. I can't question that, but I don't know how can we engage people in the EU more? Look, I live in Canada. I've never, had any reason to to imagine what it'd be like voting for some deputy to represent me in the EU. So I don't have that experience, but my impression is that it could be that the people who wanted Brexit because they wouldn't recognize their representative if they passed him on the street. They have no sense of having any influence with their representation, their parliamentarians for Europe, and that they don't, they couldn't be crazy about the idea of how much benefit they're getting for it. So I'm trying to imagine why they feel the way they do, and I've heard people say that it's that the parliamentarians in Brussels are people who are just simply not known or not really accountable to anybody in their own countries.
Yeah, that is always a challenge if you have a political system built on representation. And I of course, want that decision making should be as close to people that are affected by the decisions. But my example of Britain was not to say that they voted wrong, but they were engaged. That was the part that those who wanted to leave, they also said that they were prepared to engage for something. But those who wanted to see it is good as it is, they didn't want to engage. So I think when I grew up, I didn't think that I would need to engage in human rights or obvious rights for minorities or people with other sexual identities or whatever, and democracy. But you have, and I think that we really have to fill that gap. It's not easy, but
well, that involves changing human beings. And in my experience, it's a whole lot easier to change an institution. Not that it's easy, but you can maybe sometimes do it. But I would never be a very good psychotherapist because I've never been able to influence anybody to change into the kind of person I want them to be. So I don't have much hope of changing human nature or large populations of opinions or a sense of engagement. That is the challenge. If we were all good citizens and active and participatory, we wouldn't be, you and I wouldn't even have to do this conversation today. We're talking about the fact that we're all so sloppy and lazy about engagement. But I don't have a solution for it. I can only think in terms of changing structures.
Yes, but who should change the structures? that has to come from some sort of legitimacy, and that the ground for that is some sort of engagement, unless you want like to be some sort of dictator and decide yourself about the institutions.
I know, it's true. and the prospects are getting worse and worse. I mean,
Right.
This year, as you know, we're going to be having a lot of the countries will be having elections for new governments, and it looks bad. It looks like we're going downhill.
Right.
The people being elected are not going to necessarily be people you and I would vote for.
Yes, I know you have your plumber is not there, but my daughter is over there, and she's looking at me because I promised her at 5:30 I will be available, and we are walking away from the office. So there is a 2-minute slot if you have a question or so at the end here. Otherwise, we will meet again.
Okay. Well, I'm delighted to. I don't know how we can cooperate, but I feel you're somebody I'd love to cooperate with, and that your organization is refreshing and inspiring to me. So let's plan to have some further conversation, or if we can, I don't know. I would like to know more about the Summit of the Future.
Mm,
I don't, it's sort of something I'm aware of off in the
mm.
periphery of my vision, but I have not been engaged with it. But it sounds as if you're really up to your neck in
Yes,
working
I
on
can
that.
send you some
Uh,
new drafts and ideas about it.
Well, if you see ways in which our support and
Mm,
cooperation can be useful, we are engaged.
mm.
That much I
Right.
can promise you.
Yeah. Nice talking to you.
Very, very pleasant, and it's very, very nice to have a new friend.
Mm.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you very much. Bye
Bye.
bye.